Mera Gardens is a fresh cut flower producing farm. I just finished my 19th year. I grow and sell fresh, what we call specialty cut flowers, which means that when I started out, my intention was to grow flowers that were neither carnations, chrysanthemums, gladioli, nor roses. That was 19 years ago. Those four are the staples of the flower industry in the United States. 20 years ago, if you went to a flower shop to buy a bouquet, it was guaranteed to have one or all of those flowers, plus a bunch of greenery. There is an organization in the United States and now in Canada and in Europe called the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. The idea is to diversify that product line. And because we live in the Rogue Valley, which is an extremely generous growing area, and I mean in terms of climate, the soil isn't necessarily rich or adequate, but the climate is very generous. We have a long growing season as opposed to if you lived in the mountains of Colorado or you lived in Alaska or even if you lived in Florida. Ours has seasons, and so we can grow a huge variety of flowers. Was because I had two children, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old when I started, and they were going to come to work with me every day, and they were going to be running around in the fields and in my greenhouses. And they're little, you know, they're close to the ground where there would be pesticides, insecticides. So we're not doing that. And then much later on I had employees. They started bringing their children to work, so it was very clear why I was doing what I was doing, which is not to say that I wasn't tempted. Sometimes one of the biggest difficulties in farming organically are weeds. You turn your back and a weed will be there. They were there first and they plan on being there as soon as we leave. And it's so labor intensive to deal with weeds that you're very tempted to pour Roundup, but I can't do that. So the advantage is your people, whether they're your employees, your children, their children, anyone walking through, there is nothing that I'm exposing those people to that I'm not exposed to myself. And I think that we're all pretty selfish human beings and we don't want to hurt ourselves. And so I am not guilty of hurting anyone with what I choose to amend my soil with or deal with producing a better flower. And there's no question at all that I'm treating the earth much better. I'm treating the earth for the long run. When I leave this farm in 20 years' time, my plan is for that soil to be as good, if not better, than when I took it over. It's essential. It's absolutely essential. Now, as organic farmers, you know, we're not lily white either because we deal in animal manures. We are one of the most important pieces to run a good organic farm is compost. We have to produce a massive amount of compost to return to the soil amendments. And that's the biggest difficulty in organic farming is getting enough nutrition into anything. If you are a quote-unquote conventional, you scatter fertilizers that are very, very rich and are very carefully, the chemistry of it is very carefully worked out, and so the plant is rich by supplying them with that chemical compound. For us, it's much, much harder. So we need to produce huge piles of compost. And one of the biggest problems is animal manures. And there's now in the United States a requirement called Good Agricultural Practices. It's called GAP. And one of the things that it's asking us as organic farmers is to deal with the leach that comes out of compost piles. So we now have to find a way to manage that leaching and build canals that will drain, that will carry what is leached into a tank which has to be buried underground. And from that tank, of course, we're going to use that. We're going to, because it's what's called compost tea, really, we're going to irrigate our plants with that. Labor, cost of labor. Going back to the weed problem. Weed pressure is huge in organic farming. I would say that's the biggest thing, because you cannot harvest a flower or a vegetable if the weeds are this high. You spend a lot of time, it's not that you can't, but you spend a lot of time looking for what you're trying to pick. And in order to make bottom line in farming, you have to be efficient. Farming is, dealing with nature is not an intrinsically efficient activity. So you try to trim constantly to become efficient. And for me, being an efficient picker means I have as few obstacles as possible. And that's getting rid of the really big weeds, get them out of the way, so that my eyes see flowers and I look for flowers. I would like to think so. Sometimes my eyes are a bit glazed over by the hope. What I have seen is a significant increase in small farms in our valley. Really, really significant. A lot of young people going back to the land. And those small farms tend to, if they're not certified organic, they're at least following practices that are closer to organic than they would have gone maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now the biggies, which are the ones that we really should be looking at, Earthbound is very, very big, and it's in California, and it's organic. That's fabulous. We want the big ones to go organic because, we can all do our little bit, but the impact of a big farm going organic is substantially greater. But I am encouraged in the Rogue Valley, and we want that, because if you pave something over, it's over. It's never going to be dirt again. So it's nice that more and more little farms are showing up here and there. Well, a lot. Same as you would do in a household. Mind what goes back into the watershed. I suppose the farmers are a little better at understanding than you or I as regular citizens, that what the soil absorbs because you spilt it is going to eventually end up in the water table, and eventually perhaps in a watershed, or eventually in a creek or in our irrigation pond. I mean, I think that cycle is very clear to us. I have to tell you that one thing that we're really bad at as farmers, I think in general, is protecting the amount of water. I mean, you hear that in the news all the time. Agriculture is the biggest user of water, and it is. It really is. We've come a long way. You rarely see in the type of farming that we do overhead sprinkling in the middle of the day. You very rarely see that. We've all transitioned to drip tape. So there's lots of things that affect water. It's whether you're close to a creek, whether you have a water right, if you, how much water you use, how efficient are you in its usage. We watch that water very carefully. I mean, you cannot do agriculture in this valley without water. I have fellow farmers all over the country. Many don't irrigate. They count on, the evening thunderstorm and things like that. We need water from April on. We can't do anything without water.